Every so often, characters come along who are so magnetic that they manage to transcend their own show, breaking out of the boundaries from their own story and finding themselves spoken about and referred to by the broader audience at large in all manner of ways, from crossovers to becoming inspirations. For One Punch Man, it's no secret that Saitama is this character. Known worldwide for his antics, he's compared to other popular characters constantly and has inspired many people to do many things. But did you know that it's not only Saitama who has transcended One Punch Man's bubble? That's right, there's another, and for entirely different reasons. It's the hero hunter, Garou, who had hunted his way into the hearts and minds of anime fans. A character so engaging that he's still spoken about to this day, even 6 long, painfully quiet years after season 2, despite not being a villain of the modern big 3 anime, where long-term renown is more likely to come by due to higher viewership. During those years, fans have fantasized about how other characters in other popular shows would fare with Garou hunting their heroes, used him as inspiration for bettering themselves through fitness, and identified him as an example of pushing past your own limits. So how has a one-season villain from an anime which vanished from sight for over half a decade, as of the recording of this video, stayed so beloved? We're diving into how Garou won over the audience in season 2 today. And don't worry anime-only viewers, there'll be no mention of manga events or spoilers since this video only views Garou through the lens of the anime perspective and not progressions from the manga. I'd also ask those in the comments to not reference the manga either, out of respect for the anime-only watchers, since this is an anime covering video. Also, a quick shout out to Gallenberger for his Tengen Broke anime video from some time ago, which is what inspired me to adapt my own version with Garou today.
Well, one of my best disciples went wild.
We're first introduced to Garou very briefly within the events of Season 1, when Silverfang refers to him as a powerful student of the Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist who had gone wild and violently beaten the rest of his class senseless while Silverfang was away. Upon returning, Silverfang gave Garou a good beating to teach him a lesson and then sent him away for good, marking their disconnect. At this point, it likely wasn't a thought in the average viewer's mind that this very student would go on to become one of the series' most recognizable and important characters. Season 2 is where we're properly introduced to the troublesome teenager. To what may surprise many, given how mature Season 2's art style presents his facial features at times, Garou is an 18-year-old martial arts prodigy who's become a self-proclaimed monster, his goal being to defeat heroes and flip the script on how the world sees both heroes and monsters. It's after this terrifying entrance where he pulverizes 3 strong heroes, then brutalizes a room full of hardened criminals, that Garou's gauntlet of hero hunting begins. A wild ride we've all remembered for years since. But it's not every day that you wake up and just decide you feel like throwing a roundhouse kick into the face of humanity as a whole. So how'd he end up deciding to start the biggest handicap match in history? Well, it all had to do with his childhood. Garou grew up as an outcast, a child who didn't have any friends and was mistreated by those who did. What didn't help him further was his empathy toward monsters. Unlike many who simply wanted to see monsters vanquished without thought, Garou empathized with monsters who had a reason for their attacks. Something many may not realize is both Garou and Saitama were moved by crab monsters for their pushes toward realizing their goals. Saitama saved the boy from Crablante, which directly led to him starting a hero's journey, while Garou was saddened that a crab monster was teamed up on and killed by heroes when all it wanted was for humans to stop polluting the ocean. A moment which played a heavy part in his anti-hero ideology. Combined with his own experiences of being isolated from his classmates after having been bullied by them, then punished by adults for standing his ground, this all led to Garou harboring views that saw heroes as nothing more than self-righteous bullies who sought popularity and applause from making victims of outcasts like him who no one stood up for. Not valued by his parents, accosted by teachers, and antagonized by those who should have been his friends, Garou set out to learn martial arts from Silverfang after deciding that he would gain strength for himself to unleash upon the world once he was ready. Not as a human, but as a monster. It's clear from his backstory that Garou's main problem wasn't ever really with heroism, yet it was a desire to fight back against bullies, be they hero or monster, who would use their popularity and self-righteousness to tread upon those undeserving of it who didn't have the luxury of society's favor. Given Garou's current age, and how old he was when these feelings manifested initially, it's easy to see how his views may not completely hold up under scrutiny, given how even he himself can be hypocritical of his supposed goals. Yet this position of values is where he had led himself regardless. Now, if you chose to click upon Garou's face on your YouTube feed, I'm sure you don't need the full breakdown of Season 2 story elements since you likely already know. Therefore, I won't dive any deeper than that into Garou's history and following events. So how exactly did Garou win people over during his hero hunt when all logic and reasoning says you should have been against the guy beating up the heroes we're supposed to support? There are some key elements which combine in subtle manner to impressively shift the weight of your perspective. For most people, their first thoughts of Garou were fear, worry or disapproval, earned by his ruthless performance at the Hero Association. However, as the season progresses, this perception turns to leniency, then respect, and finally, support. However, while respect and support are words easy to identify with Garou once you've enjoyed Season 2, what do I mean by leniency? When we're introduced to Garou, it's under negative connotations. He wants to dismantle the way of heroes in One Punch Man as we know it. So from the beginning, as a viewer, you are against Garou and are prepared for it to remain that way after his demonstration at the Hero Association headquarters. We expect this man to go on a killing spree and that he'll take out any and every hero without mercy. But what happens instead? Garou turns out to not be as bad as we think. He's still hunting heroes, yet he hasn't killed anybody. Fight after fight, we witness him leave his victims alive and capable of recovery. With this, as the viewer, we start to realize that this man is not as irredeemable like we expected. If Garou had killed Tank Top Master, if he had killed Golden Ball and Spring Mustachio, if he had killed Moomin Rider, it would have been a step across the line which most viewers would have trouble overlooking. Yet, Garou committing criminal acts only ever went up to the line and never past it because his refusal to kill heroes who defend humanity kept him as someone human to us, the viewers, instead of turning him into a monster we'd have no choice but to require the defeat of. We can be lenient with Garou's crimes because he never crosses a line which the viewer can no longer defend or feel at ease about. If he had killed Moomin Rider and other heroes, the general audience would have turned against him because Garou's actions would have lost the future forgiveness of the general viewer if he had done so. Sparing heroes tells the audience without words that there can be leniency for Garou. He may be a villain right now and he may be causing trouble, but you don't need to cast him aside, at least not forever, because his behavior shows that redemption is possible. People began wanting to see Garou survive his battles later in the season as opposed to earlier, because when he attained victory against those we were supposed to support, he chose to let them survive contrary to our initial expectations where we believed he would kill those who sought to protect us, the innocent, yet he showed mercy after obtaining victory. This granted Garou leniency from the audience, and with lenience comes the opportunity for viewers to begin appreciation, since positive experience has created the space for more favourable recognition. When you hate a villain, you want to see them stopped, no matter what. When you like a villain, even though you know they're doing bad, you want to see them stopped but still survive because now you have investment in their character. And to help with this leniency were moments of humanity which told the viewer that despite Garou's words, he wasn't the monster he was so keen to convince everyone of. Garou was never shown hitting women or children, both big points for staying on the good side of viewers. Certain things like sex crimes and harming children are the type of acts where even if death is not involved, can very easily turn an audience against the character permanently, especially for a villain, yet Garou was shown to be the opposite of this. Here was a so-called bad guy punching a sleazy executive in the face who tried to convince women to kiss him for benefits. Here was a so-called bad guy keeping a lonely child company and conversing with him about heroes and monsters before telling him to get home at the sound of danger, showing the audience that this man maybe wasn't as bad as we all believed him to be. A man who decided to stop fighting a hero he had the advantage over because his little sister declared the fight to be over. A declaration he didn't need to follow, nor was under any pressure to. However, for her benefit, he postponed his lifelong goal to avoid upsetting a young girl. Then, for bonus points, scared off monsters who sought to take advantage of the downed Metal Bat and his sister Zenko, which acted as a double tap to also let us know that even if he calls himself a monster, he's not like the ones we're fine with being against. The leniency given by audiences for his mercy turns to respect and empathy through these moments of humanity, turning Garou from a villain who everyone thought they'd be rooting against into an intriguing, unpredictable character who builds conflict within how audiences view his journey. This battle of emotion brought forth by this character inside of the viewer is one of the reasons why Garou is so popular, and why he broke out from his anime as a highlight character, along with being an incredibly cool and badass fighter. People start the season with a strong desire to see Garou taken down, only to be cheering and worrying for him by the end of the season like he were a character they'd loved for years. All because the writing knew to never let Garou cross a line he couldn't come back from with the viewers, giving everyone the moral permission to enjoy his relentless hard work, unexpected warmth, entertaining skill, and impressive dedication without having to feel torn by overlooking anything foul he had done, like hero murder. Essentially, the season had given us a character who had the grandeur of an antagonist and the heart of a protagonist. Another key element in what made Garou so appealing as a character to audiences was how his level of power was presented. When a new main villain turns up in a show, it's expected for him to beat anyone and everyone without issue to show how good he is. Yet, One Punch Man did something a little different. Garou's experience as a villain was almost like that of a protagonist instead. He didn't start out as the ultimate bad guy. No, like the character of a video game that we would play, we had to watch him build up throughout the course of a season, leveling up against tougher and tougher opponents, while having to flee from the ones who were too strong, or simply watch him get one-shotted by the Baldy himself. This kept the villain humble in a way you don't often see, and it made it even more interesting given his experience was far different from what we were accustomed to with Saitama. Usually, the main hero is the one who needs to spend a bunch of time losing and improving, while the main villain cleans house with ease until the end. Here, we had the main hero be the overwhelming force in all of his scenarios, while Garou was seemingly acting in reverse, trying to build himself up as the villain to take on the main hero instead of it conventionally being the other way around. Everyone loves a story of growth where someone gets stronger and learns more moves as they progress through the series to finally get closer to doing what they've always wanted to do. Yet here, we were strangely getting that experience with an antagonist, someone who was getting better and better after overcoming hardships and stacked odds for all the wrong reasons, but still giving the viewer that satisfaction of improving through the grind and never giving up. Throw this in with the leniency and respect factor I mentioned earlier, and you've got a reverse protagonist in a sense, someone giving the audience the thrilling rush of overcoming challenges, improving their skills, and developing as a character, except from the other side of the train tracks, since his goal is to kick the ass of all the good guys. Added to this, Garou's work ethic is something to be admired, even if it's a work ethic of hunting heroes. The fact that he never gives up, doesn't whine about anything, and breaks out from the jaws of defeat time and time again through sheer grit and fuck you energy is something which just multiplies all of that goodwill subtly earned from him throughout the season, making everything he does just that much cooler to the audience. At some point, people stop thinking of him as an antagonist and start thinking of him as an underdog. And while even though you can still be both of those things, audiences usually always resonate with someone who has their back against the wall, and with Garou being someone they've organically started to root for over time, since the trajectory of Season 2's events has instilled within the viewer's mind that maybe he's not the villain they thought he was after all, and is instead something more complicated, well, it leaves the anime community with a lasting impression of an antagonist who is universally loved, even though he spent the whole season beating up heroes who risk their lives for the safety of everyone else. And it's because of some key elements like this which allowed Garou to break anime when he arrived on the scene roughly 6 years ago, becoming a character who used Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist to take all of that initial viewer energy against him early within Season 2, and then redirected it right back at the audience with twice the power, making himself a character who went from threat to favorite within 12 exciting episodes. an antagonist who inspired instead of discouraged by standing up to society as a whole and saying, "I'm not going to move, you are." It's easy to name drop lots of big villains who left wide-scale impressions on anime fans, yet it's not so easy to imagine those same ones having done it with only 12 episodes to their name, making Garou's breakout even more impressive in a series where it's already so easy to be overshadowed by the One Punch Man himself. All of this and more shows what a great job One and Murata did with Garou, and why he continues to be a standout antagonist in fighting anime despite having such a limited amount of time in the limelight when only anime is concerned. Of course, the ideas discussed here aren't the only things which gave Garou an awesome anime display so far, but these are the aspects I wanted to cover today since they resonated a lot with me and others I've spoken to in regards to Season 2 of One Punch Man. So I hope they resonated with you too, and that you found some value within today's video. I can't wait for Season 3, and I'm very excited for the anime only folks to see how Garou's journey progresses once it continues in October. Leave a like and subscribe, comment if you enjoyed it here at Saitama World.